Like Mike said, I'm Brad Nelson, CFO, also VP Finance and Technology. Technology is actually my background. I started in software development for Betenbough Homes many years ago. And it's actually kind of funny. This gentleman over here was asking me how many times I've done this, and the answer is actually just once. So this is it, actually. Public benefit corporations are actually such a new thing in the world that there aren't that many experts on them. And so today you get me. Are there any lawyers in the room? Lawyers? Cool, so I can say whatever I want and nobody will know the difference. Any business owners, though? So we got some business owners in the room. And so of the business owners in the room, I want to take a quick poll. How many of you think that your business exists for something other than just profitability, other than just making money? So we have some people in the room who have businesses who exist for purposes beyond profit. And so that's really what we're kind of getting into today is this realm, and this isn't really like a recent thing. Obviously, it's been around for a long time, but this has become kind of a bigger thing as people learn that having a purpose beyond profit is actually drives your profit. There are a lot of things about that are not only just attractive to employees, but attractive to investors as well. And actually, when you look at it, we had a PhD business researcher come talk to us the other day, and he was telling us that businesses that have a purpose beyond profit actually perform better financially than businesses that just exist for profit. And that shouldn't be surprising because money is not exactly a great motivator, is it? When you pay somebody money to do something, really what they're not just seeing the money behind your payment. What they're seeing is the potential that money has to fulfill their own personal purposes. And the more you can align the purpose of your business with the purposes of your employees, their own personal purposes, the more magic is going to happen in your own business. So that being said, I want to take a step here and talk about some corporate law. So this is going to give you kind of some background on why public benefit corporations are such an important thing. And in corporate law, so everyone knows what corporations are, corporate decisions have to be justified using shareholder value. So whenever we make a decision as a corporation, really we have to be making that decision in terms of the best interest of the shareholders. So really what we're supposed to be doing is making money for the shareholders. And that's actually a law. I can't get around that. Directors, officers are all bound to act in the best interest of shareholders. If we don't, the shareholders can actually come sue me. So me as a CFO, if I make a decision that's counter to the interest of the shareholders of our company, and not being a public benefit corporation, they can actually come in and sue me and say, you gave a bunch of money away that one year, you gave 82%. That doesn't make sense in business terms. So I'm going to sue you and kick you out of the company and maybe hold you personally liable for what you just did. And so that's actually, a lot of people don't know that about corporations, but that's actually true. Your shareholders can sue you. And so, but that's an interesting thing because a lot of companies nowadays and a lot of entrepreneurs and even investors are starting to see this, is this idea of social responsibility in your own business. You look at maybe like a Tom's Shoes, and I'm not saying Tom's Shoes is perfect, but you think about Tom, and it's actually funny, he and I went to the same high school. He didn't set out with this idea that I'm going to take all this money that I have and buy a bunch of shoes and just give them away. He said, I'm going to take all this money I have, start a business, and now I have this economic engine that's just continuously generating shoes that I can give away. And that's a really cool idea. And so this idea of social responsibility in business has really taken off. However, there's some problems. And that is, so in the Tom Shoe case, I want to have a corporation and I want to have shareholders. I don't want to just always own this myself. I want to go public maybe at some point or something like that. But how do I have this social responsibility on the one hand, where I want to do all these great things for society, for the public, for the beneficiaries of this company, but I also have to legally balance profit with it because corporate law says that, well, you have to act in the best interest of the shareholder. And so I've got this problem now. I want to give shoes away, but now I have to make a lot of money at the same time. And if those ever come into or go out of balance, then my shareholders might come sue me. And that's a pretty significant problem. my liability as an officer or director is a serious problem there too. But the other problem that you have in a social enterprise is mission drift. And that's the problem where I started out, maybe I'm Tom Shoes, maybe I'm Betenbough Homes. We started out with this idea that we're going to really care for people. And I'm not getting into this purpose of Betenbough Homes just yet, but let's go back to Tom Shoes. I'm going to give a lot of shoes away. How do I ensure that the future, after I'm gone, how do I ensure that the future directors, the future shareholders, and the future officers are all bound by that same social purpose? If they can't just decide, that was nice then, but this is now and we're going to make money again. And we're going to go back to just focusing on profit. So enter public benefit corporations. The first public benefit corporations were in Maryland in 2010. So this has been around for less than a decade. This is very new stuff. And what it is it's an election by a regular corporation. So any corporation can elect this in assuming you're in a state that has it. And what you do is you have a public benefit statement. So you have a statement that says, these are the people that I want to benefit, and this is the benefit that I want to give them. And as we'll talk about in a minute, these can actually be a lot of different benefits. And in Texas, it's very broad. But you also, in addition to the public benefit statement, you have to actually back up that you're going to do that with a public benefit report that's issued regularly. In Texas, it's biennial. In other states, it's annual. It just kind of depends on the jurisdiction that you're in. And what this allows you to do is when you make that election and you have a public benefit statement and you produce a benefit report, now the corporation and its officers and its directors can now balance profit with this other public benefit. And they can also balance that with the impact that that corporation has on the people that it just interacts with in daily life. And so that's a really cool thing. So now, if I started a shoe company and I want to give lots of shoes away, now I can say, because I want to help people not be barefoot and avoid the diseases that you get when you're barefoot, I can now balance that with this also need to make money. Whereas before, if I wanted to heal people's bare feet, I had to either be a nonprofit and do that on a nonprofit basis, and therefore I could do whatever I wanted to from a social benefit standpoint. But then I couldn't make a profit because the IRS won't let me. Or I had to just focus on profit and only profit and own the entire corporation myself so that I'm the only shareholder and I'm not really going to sue myself. And so, but I'll never take on investors and I'll never be able to go public. I'll just be stuck with what I am. So that's a really cool thing. So a lot of people have kind of heard a couple terms here, and I want to kind of dispel a couple myths. A lot of people have heard of what's called a certified B Corp. Has anybody ever heard of that? Anybody ever think certified B Corp and PBC was the same thing? I did at one point. Certified B Corps are different. They're not necessarily the same thing. Actually, a lot of PBCs are also certified B Corps, and a lot of certified B Corps are also PBCs, but not necessarily. Certified B Corp is really like a certification, like LEED certified or certified humane animals. We're in the farming business, so but that's all really certified B Corp means. It's not a legal status. It's being a certified B Corp doesn't grant your officers and directors immunity from any shareholder lawsuits. It's merely it's merely a marketing thing. It doesn't protect you against mission drift because the officers can just decide to stop doing it at any point. But it does provide assurance to your customers as a marketing benefit that you're operating your business in a responsible way. And so a lot of public benefit corporations have chosen to become B Corps as well. We have not, for a few limited reasons. But some example public benefit corporations: Patagonia, Method, King Arthur Flour. Kickstarter is actually a public benefit corporation. A lot of companies are really starting to latch onto this idea, especially if they have a public benefit and they have a purpose beyond profit. They're really starting to get into this. And especially if you're in the public space. It's a big deal for investors nowadays. A lot of people are looking to invest in socially responsible businesses that have a public benefit. And so that's a good thing. PBC in Texas, let's talk about that. PBC in Texas is actually it's less than a year old at this point. The first PBCs in Texas could have only started less than a year ago on September 1st of 2017. That was passed by the prior legislative session. This requires an election in your articles of incorporation to take advantage of it. So those of you who have started a corporation, you have articles of incorporation. What you do is, if you're filing a new entity, you just include this in your articles of incorporation. If you're changing an existing entity, which is actually what we did, you actually have to amend your articles of incorporation and possibly rename the company. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. It does require you to state your public benefit. It requires shareholder consent. So you do have to have 2/3 of your shareholders consent to this. So if you have a lot of shareholders, you'll have to have a vote, and you'll have to send out ballots, and you'll have to actually have people vote on it, which is a good thing. The nice thing about that, and really the mission drift protecting part of that, is that 2/3 of the shareholders actually have to vote to stop you from being a PBC, to cancel the conversion, which is a good thing. So in Texas, you are required to create a biennial public benefit report. So this is a little different from other states. The biennial public benefit report is essentially a report to your shareholders that says, this is what we did to accomplish our public benefit. So if my public benefit is supplying shoes for people, then I would have to produce a public benefit report that shows, here's how many shoes I produced, and this is who they went to, and all these things that can show to the shareholders that I actually did what I said I was going to do. Now, in other states, public benefit corporations are bound by third-party standards of measurement for that public benefit. So it's kind of like how we have GAAP in accounting. GAAP kind of is a third-party standard by which we run our books. The same thing is true in public benefit statements. So there's third parties that create standards for these, and and it's so new that there's not actually just one that you have to choose, like there is in accounting. You can choose whatever you want. You just have to state it. Now in Texas, you don't have to do that. Texas, the directors of a corporation are actually eligible to choose whatever they want to have their public benefit report based on it. However they want to measure it, they can do that. They just have to state it somehow, and the shareholders have to know about it. A couple things also on public benefit corporations in Texas is, well, first, there's virtually no case law on this. There haven't been any decided cases, so I wish I had better news for you than that, but a court could come through and just, the statute was written so broadly, and that's Texan style right there from a legislative standpoint, is to do really broadly and give people a lot of freedom to just kind of do whatever they want. And so I think that's really cool, but at the same time, you don't really know how a court is going to come in and interpret a lot of this. So your mileage may vary, I guess. So in Texas also, a public benefit statement has to be in one of the defined categories in the statute. So it has to be either an artistic, charitable, cultural, economic, educational, environmental, literary, medical, religious, scientific, or technological. And so that's a big nice list, and I'm actually pretty sure now that I'm seeing it, you can't see that, and that's okay. Get really close, I don't know. Conspicuously present there is religious, and that is a really interesting thing to see in Texas because there's only a couple other states that actually did this. The organization that advocates for public benefit corporations does not consider religious purposes to be part of a public benefit, but Texas does. And a couple other states do, and as far as I can tell, Betenbough Companies is actually the only religious public benefit corporation in existence. If any of you guys actually run across any in your travels, please email me. That'd be awesome to know about them. But as far as I can tell, we're the only ones so far. And it's actually really challenging to define a religious purpose and a religious public benefit statement. So. That's a great question. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It can be a combination of any of these. And really, these are so broad that you can kind of come up with anything you want. And that was kind of the intent of the Texas legislature was, let's figure out how to give people the ability to do this and not restrict it in any way. So, kind of neat. Technological is kind of an interesting one, actually. yeah, I don't know. They seem to do a good job though. So let's talk about us. Let's talk about Betenbough Company's PBC. If you're wondering, normally a corporation has to put Inc. on the end, right? You have to notify people, and that's so that people know that you're a corporation. In the PBC world in Texas, you have to notify everybody that you're a public benefit corporation. Especially your shareholders. So you have to actually print it on your stock certificates if you have them. If you remember where those are, you have to print it on there. Yeah, I know. I get a couple chuckles on that one. We chose to put it in our name. It's not strictly required, but highly recommended. I've analyzed the whole statute. I don't think there's a better way to actually do this other than to put it in your name, just PBC on the end of it. It's a little confusing, but one of the really cool things about that too is that it actually gives you an opportunity to have a conversation about it with people who are like, huh, PBC? Yeah, businesses can exist for purposes beyond profit. Did you know that? So yeah, our own purpose is to reveal God and his kingdom through our work in the marketplace. That's our company purpose statement. And so historically speaking, we've had that purpose or some version of it for the last 26 years. And so we've always existed for this. We've always had a large amount of giving. We've always invested huge amounts of money in our employees. We've sent them to all kinds of crazy, we send our employees on mission trips every year. We pay for them and their whole family to do that. That makes no business or profit sense whatsoever, but it's part of our purpose. And so we are going to keep doing it. And yeah, courts don't really like that profitable corporation is religious. I don't know that's probably not any secret, right? The last few years have been much better in that regard. I think the Hobby Lobby case is probably the first one recently where the courts have actually held that a for-profit entity selling a secular product can have a religious identity. But in most cases, they've been pretty hostile to it. There's a lot of cases over the years, we've done a lot of research on this, where corporations haven't really been held to have any religious freedom whatsoever. And so we were kind of concerned about that. And so we have all these things that we're doing, and we have this religious identity we want to protect. And then there's this other problem, is that we are an ESOP. I think Walter mentioned this before, an employee stock ownership plan. We are actually owned by our employees. And so what if an employee, decided they wanted to come along and sue us to stop us from doing it? I mean, Rick and Ron did this back in '98. The Betenbough family does not actually have majority ownership of the company anymore. Majority ownership of the company is held by the employees. And so, interesting side note, corporate governance in an ESOP is a really fascinating thing when your employees own the company. I'm not going to get into that, but the shareholder of record is actually a trust. It's the ESOP trust, and we have a trustee. Like any trust, the assets of the trust are all the shares in the company. It's held in for the benefit of the participants, which are the employees. So it's really interesting. The trustee is not an employee. They don't necessarily share our religious purpose. And so, yeah, that's kind of a problem when you're trying to maintain this religious identity. You're trying to do all these things, and yet you have a trustee that could come in and sue you at any moment if they decided they didn't like what you're doing. How do we do that? Well, actually, the answer is public benefit corporation. And actually, really, we just kind of had to deal with that up until September 1st of last year. I guess the trustee could decide that they're not happy with what we're doing, and they could come in and sue us and stop us from doing it. That was just a reality of our business. So we undertook a conversion earlier this year. We amended our articles of incorporation. You have to actually say, I elect to be a public benefit corporation. That's a required bit of language in there. We found that out. That's actually not, it's buried in the statute, but the Secretary of State takes that very seriously. And now we have this really cool protection, this layer of protection for our directors and officers and senior leadership in how we go about fulfilling this religious purpose in our business. We're very protected in it. We don't have to worry about the trustee coming in and putting a stop to it. We don't have to worry about an ex-disgruntled employee coming in and saying, well, I actually own shares in the company, so I'm going to sue you and because you are not doing things that are necessarily profitable by a worldly standard, even though actually all of us would maintain that all the things we do actually cause us to generate more profit. Is just very indirect. It's a very spiritual thing instead of a direct, like, we can follow it all the way through the financial statement to the bottom line. So, yeah, and like I said before, we're possibly the first religious public benefit corporation, period, which is kind of a cool thing. So, yeah. Any questions about public benefit corporations? Take a few until Mike takes the microphone away. So. So the statute's, again, purposely vague. It seems like you do need to put it on everything. You need to give notice. One of the ways you can do that is you can still keep Inc. in your name and say a public benefit corporation underneath. That's another option. The intent of the statute is people need to know it. And so it needs to be listed, they say conspicuously, that's the legal term, but wherever people interact with you, they need to know it. So. It is different, yep. Yeah, that's you can do whatever you want. And that's a really cool thing, right? Because legally, you're still a C Corp or an S Corp or whatever you chose to be. Legally, the corporate status still applies, and you're not a nonprofit.
So does it change your tax status?
Nope, doesn't change your tax status at all. So, for example, Betenbough Company's PBC is actually an S Corp, but you can be a C Corp too, or whatever you want. That's really, and from the state of Texas standpoint, there's no such thing as a tax status. You're either a corporation or you're not. So in a normal PBC, you still get to write off if you give money to a 501c3, and that's part of your public benefit. If you're fulfilling your public benefit by giving money to a nonprofit, then that is still a write-off. But if we do it within the company, it's not a write-off. That's a business expense. Funny thing about Betenbough Companies, as an ESOP, and an S Corp ESOP, this is fun. We're an S Corp ESOP. All of our shares are held in a ESOP trust, which is actually a qualified 401A retirement plan by the IRS. Means that all of our income passes through to the plan. We don't actually pay taxes. Yeah. Anyone want to be an ESOP? Any other questions? That's a good question.
But if you did not have the ESOP set up, and you make money,
Yep, still got to pay taxes. Yeah, PBC doesn't get you out of that. So, an ESOP actually only defers you on taxes, doesn't necessarily get you out of it. So,
We got to press on one of
Yeah.
the